Maria! Nein! Nein!
Geil, wenn aber alles miteinander käme, dann haben wir hier ein Problem. Das Problem kann ich vielleicht hier visualisieren. Im schlimmsten Fall haben wir bis hier Wasserfall. Und wir sind hier im Gemeindehaus genau in diesem Einzugsbereich von dem. Das ist der schlimmste Fall.
At a height of 11,000 feet, this mountaintop, more than 20 million cubic meters, is threatening to bury a village with more than 1,200 inhabitants. This could be a bigger catastrophe than Blatten, and the mountain has already started sending down rock slides.
Schau da! Schau da! Scheiße! Jesus Gott!
Will we see the next disaster, a disaster like Blatten, just with almost twice the amount with debris, and that only 13 kilometers if you'd fly there away? And the residents there are saying, if it only would be over soon. The Spitzenstein, millions of cubic meters of rock and debris threaten the village of Kandersteg, and they're moving more vigorously than ever before right now. Everything you need to know about that in this video. Look at this beautiful scenery. The idyll at Lake Oeschinen is deceptive. Above this popular tourist destination in the Bernese Oberland, millions of tons of rock and debris are in motion, guys. So this year, with 7 to 10 meters of debris flowing, coming down, the largest volume ever recorded. And for several years now, thousands of cubic meters of rocks have already and repeatedly broken off and thundered down in the valley. The risk of a massive landslide is a burden to the population and also poses major challenges for the authorities and the experts. And it has gotten so much more frightful since they actually saw what could happen when 9 million cubic meters of debris were crashing down and destroying and burying the village of Blatten. So they're asking themselves, are we next? Geologists expect the mountain to collapse gradually in small pieces like they did in Blatten. But in the worst case scenario, they think around 18 million cubic meters could break off at once. That was also the worst case scenario in Blatten. And then it got even worse than the worst case scenario. The debris pile that spread out even further exceeded their calculated evacuation zone by 300 meters. And that's why probably that poor shepherd is lost, because he was not in the evacuation zone and then was surprised by that debris flow. Remember that devastating landslide in 2017 on Pizzcengalo in Bondo. So 18 million cubic meters, that would be 6 times more than the devastating rock slide there and twice as much as Blatten. And if we look at the pictures of Blatten and we think twice as much coming down towards a village, it's absolutely frightening. The village of Kandersteg has a population of 1,300 people. In Blatten, around 300 people were evacuated. So we're even talking about a bigger populated area here. So let's have a closer look at this, because this mountain, I think it's equally as frightening. What is going on and what do we have to expect? Does a picture like this look familiar? So everything you see in red is the unstable area. That looks like Blatten. And then what is blue, it's not a glacier this time, but that's the risk for big rock falls And then the orange, that's the risk for these landslide avalanches. And then down there, the red dot in the orange area, that is Kandersteg. That's the village. And it looks like the valley is really forming like a way for these rocks, filtering them onto the village. It looks really familiar. That's why it looks so frightening. And we're waiting for the heavy rainfall to phase out in the Blatten area right now and see what will happen there, because there's a new lake that has formed where the glacier once was. You should check out my Blatten playlist. So much is going on there. The danger is still high. But in the summer of 2024, here at Kandersteg, the mountain once again has terrified that Kandersteg community. Like, heavy rainfall has caused mudslides that have crushed a bridge over the Öschibach stream, as if it were made of matchsticks. That's what locals have said. So they have already experienced the power of the mountains, and they said the noise and the clouds of dust alone left many in Kandersteg breathless. And imagine now they have seen the pictures of Blatten. This looked like a volcanic eruption. I said in my last video what happened to Blatten when that cloud of dust came towards them looked like the explosion that just happened at Etna. And people described it in Blatten that saw it from the other side of the valley. They said the wall of dust came towards us like a storm. And there's an interview with an owner of the red zone in Kandersteg, and she already said that before the Blatten incidents, that she's very worried right now. She hasn't been worried for long, but after this mudslide came down, I guess people realized, dang, it can really happen. And she said in 2024, like many others in the village, they wished this would finally end, meaning everything this is unstable should come down in smaller portions so that the threat is over. I don't think they mean what happened to Blatten. Nobody could imagine that. It had never happened before in Switzerland. Something never ever seen before. That's what the experts are saying. A one in a millennium. Do they still wish that it be finally over? I don't think so. Not like Blatten. And then I want to show you a time lapse of a surveillance camera of that loose rock area on the mountain. That has been taken between 2020 and 2024. I hope we'll have an update very, very soon. But it illustrates the extent to which rock and debris are moving at the Spitzenstein. Does that look familiar? Does that look familiar? That's the question that I'm asking you guys. And if you've watched my channel and all the videos about Blatten, your answer is most likely yes. And I think now the people in the village down there also say, yes, that looks familiar. And again, questions have been asked. Could we blow that up? But, you know, blowing up wasn't possible in the Blatten disaster, because they said it would be even more uncontrollable. So blasting the area that's at risk of collapse right now, we're talking about twice as much, almost, some say 16, some say 18 million cubic meters. So twice as much as Blatten is impossible. So the amount of rock is far too large and the area is too difficult to access also. So transport, even if it was possible and not dangerous, transporting the necessary explosive alone would require 4,000 helicopter flights. So that's why they have built all these protective barriers and stuff. But they had that in Blatten as well. Didn't really help when the big thing came down. This helps when small stuff comes down, to catch it, to divert it, but not if the big one comes. They have planned further measures for the coming years, discussing additional and higher dams, 120-meter wide protective net, diversion system that would direct debris flows into the Öschiwald. I think they will probably hurry up right now with doing that. And yeah, they have a sophisticated monitoring system in place. They're monitoring the mountain 24/7. But what are the officials saying now after what happened in Blatten? I will let you know about that, because that's also very, very interesting. But first, I want to show you something else. I want to show you the surveillance of this mountain, and there you also see that this looks really threatening. So there's a total of 11 satellite-based GPS sensors. These are the orange dots. And then there's currently 27 reflectors continuously measured from the valley, and that's the blue triangles, basically every movement of the mountain. And then we have 3 different colored areas. So up to 1.5 centimeters per day, that is at the peak. That's what's coming down, how this is sliding. And then the red area, it's comes sliding down 5 centimeters per day, basically. And up to the blue area, up to 2 centimeters. That's about that per day. Might not sound much, but it shows that the rocks are in motion and that they are increasingly being detached from the part of the mountain behind them. And again, let's talk about this permafrost, because this is there too. And there's a thawed layer, which is up to 10 meters deep underneath that. And temperatures above 0 degrees Celsius are measured there in summer, so it's melting. And what scientists are saying is striking, that a permanently thawed area has developed directly beneath the already thawed layer of the last 20 years. So that has encompassed now a depth range of 10 to 20 meters, 33 to 66 feet. This is the permafrost, that blue area. That is basically, you see, in the whole mountain, that permafrost that keeps the rocks together because it's permanently frozen. It gives the mountain stability. But then around it, with these orange lines, this is the layer that is thawing and thawed. And normally the permafrost is hidden beneath a layer several feet and meters thick and is invisible. But at the Spitzenstein, due to these severe landslides and scree and rock that have already come down, it occasionally even appears briefly at the surface. And you see it here in that picture. And if it's exposed to the surface, it's thawing even faster. We now have the problem in Blatten that the glacier that come down, lots of ice is mingled with the debris and is covered by the debris. So it will melt very, very slow. It's still a rare occurrence to see permafrost on the Earth's surface that they see there at the Spitzenstein. That mountain is generally unstable. That's what the scientists are saying. And the experts there before the Blatten incident said we have the mountain under control. I don't think they still say that. So this seems to be a trend. I think there's way more villages that are at risk, that might face something like Blatten, maybe smaller, maybe larger. But again, what are the residents and the council members of Kandersteg saying now after Blatten? The danger in Blatten is not over yet, and will we see the next Blatten only 13 kilometers away from Blatten if you'd fly over the mountains? Some say as the crow flies. Is the Spitzenstein near Kandersteg in the canton of Bern. So is the next mega landslide looming there? That's the big question. And the answer is yes, unfortunately, it could be. And that's an interesting case because they have a construction stop since 2020, exactly because of that danger. And before Blatten, they have said, well, if we always assume the worst case scenario, life becomes very difficult. Somewhat true, of course, but now we see how difficult life becomes if the worst case scenario happens. And thankfully, everyone in Blatten was prepared except the shepherd. And if you want to know what happened to the shepherd and why the shepherd was where he probably was, check the video in the end screen because they have miscalculated the size of the evacuation zone. And in Blatten, we have to say, the worst case scenario for Blatten was worse than the worst case scenario. So the landslide in Blatten shows parallels to the Spitzenstein that is close by. The dangers are a little different. Of course, no mountain is the same, but it is kind of scary if you look at that huge pile of rock that is threatening to come down. We had 9 million cubic meters come down at the Blatten landslide, and look at the aerial pictures how massive that is. It has buried the village of Blatten. Now we're talking about 16 million cubic meters that could come down. And basically the situation is the same. They're wondering, well, will it come down all at once, or will it come down in portions, smaller portions? That's what they were hoping in Blatten, and that's what they thought would happen until boom, everything came down at once. So they just had a council meeting on that tragic Wednesday. The Kandersteg Municipal Council was meeting when the glacier and the mountain above Blatten collapsed. Very, very nearby. Maybe they probably could still hear or feel the rumbling. And they said, their president, the council president, has said we were deeply shocked, absolutely in shock. He's a hotelier himself, so he knows what it means when a mountain starts to slide. And for several years, thousands of cubic meters of rock have repeatedly broken off the Spitzenstein above Kandersteg. And they have thundered down the valley. They have already. So while geologists expect the mountain to collapse gradually in small pieces, in the worst case scenario, 16 million cubic meters could break off at once. By comparison, 9 million cubic meters fell in Blatten. So if you imagine that, you look at the Blatten disaster and then you think almost twice as much would come down. And maybe the geologists are changing their opinion now after what happened to Blatten, because nobody thought that something like this would be possible. And they also said it's never seen before. And of course, they have talked evacuation in the past years already, since these rocks are already coming down in that area. And so far they said, well, evacuation only in the worst case. Their mayor says, well, I'm remaining calm in the face of the events in Blatten. I have respect for nature, but I'm not afraid. I think they should be more afraid. And he says, if we had a collapse like the one in Blatten, we would have to expect mudslides all the way to the beginning of the village, or maybe onto the village. You never know. We have seen how uncontrollable this landslide came down in Blatten. So there's certainly parallels between Kandersteg and Blatten. For example, let's have a look at the debris flow. And they're admitting, quote, if we had a landslide like the one in Blatten, we would have to expect debris flows reaching the beginning of the village. And you see a picture, it's a pretty good picture here. You see the village and you see how threatening that mountain there is. And again, this is their calculation now, the beginning of the village. They were wrong with how long that landslide would be in Blatten. So they also say evacuations are also planned in Kandersteg, but only in the worst case scenario, such as major landslides. They say we are prepared for this. We have plans for who needs to go where, and we will also practice them. So far, they think the worst case scenario is unlikely, but they thought that in Blatten as well. There are some differences between the two communities. Unlike the glacier in Blatten, the Spitzenstein does not pose a direct threat to the village of Kandersteg. Everything that comes down right now ends up in the valley between a lake, Lake Öschinen, and the village of Kandersteg. But again, if it all comes down, it spreads out like it did in Blatten. And then they had a construction stop, because this is the problem. In these villages that are threatened, they keep building and they keep growing and they keep building more. So since 2020, the canton and the municipality of Kandersteg have built protective measures worth 11 million Swiss francs, like protection walls, 2 dams on the Öschibach stream to control that stream, terrain adjustments, concrete barriers, and debris flow nets. That helps you if it breaks up in small pieces, but that won't hold if the whole thing comes down. We've seen that in Blatten. In addition, the Spitzenstein is monitored around the clock. That's good. And since 2022, a building ban has been in place virtually in the entire village. So that tells you something. If they were 100% sure that nothing can happen, well, then go ahead and keep building, right? The Swiss are very good in controlling their environment with the mountains because it is a mountain country, right? So they're very experienced in that. But there's a reason if they issue a construction ban. So, and these construction restrictions are causing resistance in Kandersteg. So the Spitzerstein interest group, for example, is pushing for relaxations of these bans. The events in Blatten haven't changed this. They still want that. The images of this glacier collapse are thought-provoking. That's what they say. But they say, in relation to that, if we always assume the worst-case scenario, life will become very difficult. But I also say better safe than sorry. I would like to think, okay, if the worst-case scenario happens, where would that debris flow go? And if it goes right where I would be sitting, you have to do something, right? But they're saying Kandersteg needs development opportunities. And they're saying we're currently blocked. For example, there's no building permit for a major house renovation. So it seems like that this building ban is not only banning new construction, it seems like they want to phase out the existing homes. If you can't renovate it, maybe you abandon it, you move away. Also, here comes the water when it comes to these landslides. The head of the Natural Hazards Department of the Canton of Bern sees parallels between Kandersteg and Blatten. In both cases, he says we're dealing with high altitude instability with a large volume. Key difference is that there's no glacier in the Spitzenstein collapse area. It's only rocks. And he says in large collapses, the availability of water is crucial. So they assume that the Spitzenstein will not break off all at once, but the pictures are certainly frightening. And again, Blatten thought that as well. One possible scenario that they say over the next 10 years is a break-off of approximately 8 million cubic meters. In terms of volume, this would roughly correspond to the collapse of Blatten. And they estimate a medium probability that this will occur. But at least what they're admitting now is that they have to take into account what has happened at Blatten and maybe recalculate and reevaluate their scenarios. Whew, guys, that was tough. That we already have a threat to the next village. It's breaking my heart for Switzerland. I've been there since I was a baby. Every year with my parents, and even after that, spent weeks there in Switzerland, in the mountains, in the valleys, skiing, hiking, just being there. I've been all over the place in Switzerland. I've been also in the big cities, but I always loved the mountains. So it's heartbreaking. And I know the people of Switzerland are good at this and are resilient. And I'm very sure that Blatten is a reminder now for them to be even more vigilant. They're so organized and they did a great job in Blatten. So I really hope that, I don't want to say they find a solution for Kandersteg, because again, as we say in Campiflegre and in many other places, to be 100% safe, you'd have to abandon the village and move away. Is that really, it's hard. So I thought I'd keep you updated about this. Let me know, what do you think? But keep in mind, Switzerland is a mountain land. We can't just say, oh, you know, how dumb are they that they're building there? Some villages have been founded 600 years ago. They've always been there, like family heirloom properties where the science or even wasn't that far to know how the threat would be. And they can't abandon their country. So give them some peace. Don't blame them for doing that, because it's all over the world. You know, if we look at Canada now, the wildfires, if we look at the US, the tornadoes, the earthquakes, the hurricanes, the floods, yeah, everyone could say, well, don't move there. Everywhere we live, something could happen. So if you like this video, guys, leave it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel for more. Check out the Blatten playlist. It's worth binge watching it from the start, how this has developed and is still developing. I will release another update also today. And if you want to support the channel, guys, I have this Buy Me a Coffee site. You can buy me a coffee, leave me a message, and the site allows me now to answer you with a 30-second video message. So to the ones that already got my answers, sometimes, you know, I don't see how it's counting down 30 seconds and I'm being cut off. This is not intentionally, the system there cuts me off, but you can answer me with 30 seconds with a video message and I can answer you back so we can see each other. So yeah, buy me a coffee if you want to support the channel. And thanks for everyone who's doing this. Thank you for my supporting members of the channel. Click the join button if you want to become a supporting member. And channel members, I will release the video soon. My boat trip. I took you with me, I promised, and it'll be released very, very soon. So thank you for all your support, for your supers here, for your comments, for being here, for your beautiful comments. Thank you so much, guys. I see you soon. Bye-bye.